Hello, my name is Liz Hiller with NACE. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Federal Career Advising, Call to Serve Network Opportunities with the Partnership for Public Service. It is my pleasure to introduce Katie Hogan, Senior Manager, and Danica Harutian, Manager from the Partnership of Public Service. Take it away, Katie and Danica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danica Harutian. Thank you so much to NACE for hosting us in this webinar today. Our team at the Partnership for Public Service is really excited to speak to you all today about federal careers for students and alumni that you work with. I used to work in higher education, so we're really grateful to connect with NACE members and the overall NACE network. Before we get started, I'd like to also hand it over to my colleague Katie to introduce herself.
Thank you, Danica, and thank you all. And special thanks to NACE for allowing us to provide this webinar. We're really excited to be here. My name is Katie Hogan. I'm a senior manager, as was mentioned, at the partnership, and I oversee our higher education work for the Partnership for Public Service, which includes our Call to Serve network, which you're going to learn more about, but as our network of higher education professionals. We also offer paid internships in government as well. I also worked in higher education for a decade. I worked to place students in internships in government for many years. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. Back to Danica.
Thank you. So on our next slide, we will introduce our webinar agenda today. We'll share a bit about our organization, the nonprofit Partnership for Public Service, and the Call to Serve network that we've mentioned. We will share a lot of resources about federal government careers and advising. I just want to note that our wonderful colleague Anne will be pasting a lot of links and websites into the webinar chat today. So be sure to click on those to save for later, and we'll share those links in follow-up as well. But we'll be covering lots of resources, including our flagship resources on gogovernment.org, created by our team, guides for students and career advisors. We'll be sharing open federal internship opportunities open now as well, and then we'll save time for questions during today's hour. So the Partnership for Public Service is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with the goal to build a better government and a stronger democracy. The organization does that in a variety of ways through engagement with federal agencies and public service recognition across the country. Our team specifically works with higher education and federal agencies with the goal to bring more young talent into government. On the next slide, the Call to Serve network collaborates with both federal agencies, and at this point, over 1,300 individuals from higher education institutions to promote and connect you all to federal opportunities for your students to help guide young people into public service. So briefly, this slide shows our team, the Call to Serve team at the partnership, including Katie and myself. Our colleague Logan on the bottom left there on the slide was able to attend the NACE conference this year in Orlando. I know it was a large gathering, but if you happen to see him or tabling for the Partnership for Public Service, he was really happy to meet and speak with NACE members. So we're really grateful to continue that engagement today. He also gave a mini TED-style talk about why young people should enter into government careers. So we're happy to share more today.
All right, so to get us warmed up, what is your greatest federal advising challenge? So I already saw some great questions coming in, but if you would like to navigate to the chat, share with us, what are some of your greatest federal advising challenges? What brought you here today? Yeah, thank you. Federal resumes ×2. It is quite different than the industry standard one-pager. The timelines, and I saw a question about that. The timelines are all over the place. The government is large and vast, and they do not have one standard schedule for when internships or entry-level hiring takes place, as we might often see in the private industry. Students not getting interviews, the long process, yes. Yeah, application announcements. Thank you for raising that. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, but USA Jobs job announcements can often look really different. And I often feel a little intimidating for students. So we'll talk more about that. Yeah, networking, contacts in government, how to use them look really different for federal government. Knowing all the opportunities, I really appreciate that one. And I appreciate everyone for what they're sharing in the chat. But yeah, the government is really big, over 2.1 million employees. It's the largest employer in the country. And so how do you even know about all the opportunities? And to make it even more complicated, they're not even all on USA Jobs. So that is a really, really fair one. Thank you all for your engagement. So we're going to tackle some of these. These are all really real, but you are in the right webinar, and we're really excited to have you and talk through some of these real challenges and hopefully get you some information. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'm going to give you just some quick history of the Call to Serve network. So Danica shared that it is a higher education network. It's over 1,300 folks and growing. I hope we get some of you today. But want to share a little bit more about how we got here. I'll talk about what we've done because we've been in relaunch mode for the last couple of years. We've successfully relaunched. We have reimagined the Call to Serve network, but I want to tell you how we got here because it relates to some of the things that we mentioned. So if we go to the next slide, a couple of years ago, the Partnership for Public Service decided that it was time to reinvigorate the Call to Serve network. And just as a friendly centering fact, the partnership was founded over 22 years ago, and core to its mission was getting young people into government. So that Call to Serve network was part of the organization from the very beginning. The Partnership for Public Service has grown and expanded to include many things. We work to uplift the federal government because we believe a federal government that is strong means a strong democracy. But that Call to Serve network has always been part of the organization. It just needed reimagined a few years ago. So we actually engaged in focus groups in 2021 with folks like you, our higher education friends, our Call to Serve network members. And we found that the barriers to federal hiring mirror a lot of what you just shared in the chat. So just maybe lack of awareness, the geographic barriers. So many job seekers understandably might assume that you would have to be in Washington, D.C. to participate in a federal career, where 85% of the jobs are actually outside of the greater D.C. area. The time to learn. So we talked about it's a whole new system. USA Jobs, reading those job announcements, that federal resume. So everything that you all just captured in the chat was definitely reflected in the focus groups with your colleagues, part of the Call to Serve network. And if we continue on, we also learned that the job jargon can be really difficult. I think that goes to the point that was made about the application announcements. Of course, pay is always top of mind, lack of transparency. So meaning folks sometimes didn't know why they didn't get an interview or why decisions were made. The time to hire is a big one. Security clearance can be kind of a mystery and confusing. And then of course, the private sector just looks different. The base salary is often higher in the private sector, which can often lead job seekers away from federal. So that led us to our next step, which was to relaunch the Call to Serve network. So based on feedback from those focus groups in 2021, we decided that it was important, based on our members' perspective, to revitalize our role as a connector, so a connector of the higher education world and the federal government, work to increase the appeal of federal jobs using our external communications. And there was a need for additional resources. And what they meant by that was our Call to Serve network focus group members said that they needed more. They needed a deeper dive. They needed training. The federal government and its hiring practices were just still very much a mystery, and there was more resources needed. So that's how we got to where we are today. I'll talk about some actions that we've taken. So first is our gogovernment.org website. So this goes along the lines of a couple of things we just talked about, but among them, the need for greater resources. So this is a one-stop shop where you can learn more about the pay schedule, which of course is confusing and different in federal government. Background checks and security clearances. We have a great resource on that. The federal resume, benefits. So yes, federal government is not always going to pay the same as a private industry salary offer. However, the benefits can often level that playing field. So as many of you may know, federal government offers really competitive, sometimes among the best health insurance and retirement options. Work-life balance. Many federal opportunities offer a lot of flexibility in work hours, the ability to work remotely, the ability not to work over 40 hours a week, right? So there's a lot of great benefits that go along with the federal opportunities. And we also offer guides for specific populations on GoGovernment, including veterans, job seekers with disabilities, Native Americans. So you can find all kinds of great opportunities and resources on this Go Government website, which is managed by the partnership, and we continue to grow it. We also went on what was called a public service roadshow last year. So we decided to go out on the road and meet students and career advisors where they are on their campus. So in all, we were able last fall to visit 48 campuses in person, 19 campuses virtually, totaling 58. We know those two numbers don't add up. That is because some schools got both a virtual and an in-person visit, but we were able to really go on the road. And a large objective was to share what we can offer, but also to listen, continually learn from our career advisors, higher education folks, students and job seekers, what it is that is on their mind, what's motivating them to apply for a federal job or maybe not apply for a federal job, and what we can do to continue to be that connector of resources and information between the higher education world and federal government. We were able to, so this shows the breakdown of those campuses that we visited. 25 were MSIs, so about 43%. And I know it's a little small, but that map of the United States, the red pins represent MSIs visited, and the blue pins represent a campus that is not designated as an MSI visited. And then the breakdown of MSA type is here on the right. We were really proud and excited and grateful for our campus hosts that allowed us to come to their campus and meet with them and their colleagues and their students. And in all, this just quick numbers, we were able to engage 85 student presentations, 17 advisors, reaching over 2,300 students and nearly 350 advisors. And again, this was last fall and our first ever roadshow. We were really excited. So I'm going to hand things back off to Danica. I know I've been talking about the trajectory the Call to Serve Network relaunch has been on, which culminates into our offering of the Federal Advisor Certificate Program.
Thanks, Katie. So today we're going to share resources that you can use to guide your students into federal hiring and federal job opportunities, but we only ultimately have 1 hour today. If you want to deep dive into the expanse of USA jobs, federal careers, federal advising, and how to use the resources to maximize your efforts on campus with limited time, we have a 7-week asynchronous program. It is asynchronous, a professional development opportunity over the course of 7 weeks this fall for folks like you to gain expertise in the federal hiring process, learn alongside a cohort of peers, and ultimately gain knowledge to have all that you need to inspire your students to answer that call to serve into public service. We'll be sharing the link with more information. We're just finishing up our summer session of career advisors from over 32 states, 69 colleges and universities, 49% of which are minority serving institutions. And actually 85% of the college advisors in this program were outside of the DC area. So included in those 7 weeks, starting at the beginning, what opportunities exist for students and recent graduates? What are federal government jobs? We do a deep dive into USA Jobs, setting up a profile, how to guide students through that platform, how to search on USA Jobs, federal resume guides and activities for advisors to be exposed to the distinction between federal resumes and one-pagers in other industries, the federal hiring process overall, special populations like Katie mentioned, veterans, Native Americans, folks who have different alumni status from government programs such as the Peace Corps. We also go through career deep dives. We'll be talking about this a little bit later, but we know that there are government jobs for folks of all academic and personal backgrounds. And one common misconception is that, I need to study politics or policy to work in the federal government. And we really outline and profile current federal employees who come from all academic backgrounds and expertise so that advisors can share those stories with their students. you won't only hear from our team in this asynchronous program. You'll also see up to 36 videos of guest speakers from the industry, from current federal employees, some of whom are also hiring managers, and gain a network of great contacts. So that's just a sneak peek of what's included in that program. So if you're interested in signing up for this program, we will share the enrollment link in the chat. Thank you. No matter what, the resources through our network are free to enroll as a Call to Serve network member as an institution. You would receive a newsletter with many resources monthly. But to enroll in that certificate program, there is a fee for professional development from your institution at the cost of $400 for one enrollment. And you can see more information about enrolling further with you and your colleagues. So we're happy to answer questions about that later on. And if you want to hear more specifically about that program, we are actually hosting a LinkedIn Live event tomorrow to go deeper into this program specifically. You'll also be able to hear from a panel of participants who finished the program this summer, featuring a panel of professionals from Michigan State and the University of Arizona who just completed the program and will be sharing what was most beneficial to them through the program. So let's get into federal government careers and advising to set the stage. If we move forward in the slide deck, we'll share some grounding statistics here that really motivate our work and we hope provide context for all of you as well. So as Katie mentioned, there are 2.1 million federal civilian employees in the country, 85% of which are based outside of the DC area. So that's one thing we like to highlight for advisors and students who may think, I don't want to move to DC, or I don't know if I want to leave my home state. How can I contribute in public service? There are so many opportunities across the country. Another guiding statistic for our work in order to bring more young people into public service is that there are only 7% of federal employees right now are under the age of 30. So we need to bring more young people into government in a way that is representative of the United States. And also 1 in 3 federal employees are eligible to retire in the next 5 years. So there is a lot of hiring and a lot of hiring initiatives happening ongoing. We mentioned that 85% of the federal workforce is outside of the DC area. Here's a recent map showing some of those numbers across the country in different states with federal employees. You can see some of these numbers here that our colleague created using federal data. So some benefits overall that we like to highlight for advisors and students is that federal government is impactful work. So students want to make a difference. Students want to have a career that means something to them. We are really inspired by stories of public servants every day who are doing meaningful work and can grow across different areas in their careers. At the same time, the benefits really matter for creating a sustainable career, and that includes a work-life balance, possible student loan repayment options, comprehensive health and retirement benefits, a focus on DEIA, improvement in action planning across federal agencies, professional development and training in the career workforce, and opportunities across agencies and career fields, as I've mentioned. So I'll hand it back to Katie to share more.
Thank you. So I'm going to offer just some of our baseline resources and guidance to advisors and job seekers on how to access federal jobs. So seems like a lot of you are familiar with USA Jobs, so you may also be familiar with how frustrating it can be. And we are honest about that. So again, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit. We believe in uplift the federal government, but we acknowledge where it can sometimes be difficult. And one of those ways is the access point for job seekers. So USA Jobs, with that in mind, we always recommend the approach of letting students know it may be hard, but there are strategies to make it a little less difficult. So that's what's important, I think, to emphasize for your students and job seekers, is that USA Jobs is the tool where the vast majority of federal opportunities will be found. And while it can be intimidating at first, there are some strategies and tips that can make it easier and ultimately lead to results. So if we go to the next slide. So navigating USA Jobs, we do want to be really clear, and that there are a couple steps that you want to make sure students and job seekers are aware of and that they take. So the first is to familiarize themselves with filters. And I know this box is a little small, but for those of you that have been on USA Jobs, there are actually ways to filter for the types of jobs that you may qualify for based on a number of things. So where the blue arrow is pointing is to that students and recent grads filter. So I know that you all likely work in higher education. You work with students and recent grads. This one, of course, is going to likely be of most interest, but there are also filters for veterans, individuals with disabilities, folks who have participated and successfully completed Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, Native Americans. So it's really important to get to know those filters and understand their utility. And then once you do that, you want to review the results. And of course, you want to put in some keywords, job series codes, locations, but from there, you're going to review the results. And then you want to take some time to review the job announcement, which I know was mentioned in the chat, rightfully so. They can be really long and confusing. We have a way to break that down. You also, I just like to make a point, want to make sure that in those job announcements, that the job is actually open to you. And I know that may sound like a really obvious one, but it can be easier than you think to get excited about and start applying for a federal job. And it turns out it's not maybe open to the public. So if you see the bottom right-hand box, this job is open to recent grads and the public. So if you had a student that you were advising that graduated in the last 2 years, because recent grads in federal government means in the last 2 years, they could apply to that job. But you always want to check that what you're looking at is actually open to you. Also really exciting update. So USA Jobs OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, which is like HR for federal government, and they oversee USA Jobs, does continue to make improvements. One of those was in earlier 2023, they released what's called a federal internship portal. So there's a screenshot here and we will link it in the chat, but this is designed to be a roundup of all internship opportunities in the federal government at any given time. So in many ways, it's a shortcut to USA Jobs. It's part of USA Jobs, but a shortcut to what I just outlined. That said, it's still new, and our recommendation at this time is to utilize the internship portal, but not as your only resource. We still recommend exploring other avenues, and we still recommend doing broader searches in USA Jobs to find opportunities for interns and recent grads, but this internship portal is definitely something to put in the toolkit when seeking federal opportunities. We saw a lot of you are interested in learning more about the federal resume. So the federal resume is really different than the standard industry typical one-pager. Federal resume is long. It can be anywhere from 2 to 7 pages. And truly, in most cases, the federal government wants to know everything. So they want to know basic candidate information, work experience, and that is inclusive of anything that was paid or unpaid, part-time, education, and then other optional pieces that we always recommend are listed here. There's a fabulous resume builder on USA Jobs that we recommend folks use, but job seekers should be as descriptive as possible. My biggest piece of advice, and we hear this a lot from federal hiring managers, is the federal resume is the application. So it is used to assess the applicant and score them. If they score high enough, they get advanced to an interview. And then if they advance from interview to offer phase, they actually still use that resume to determine where they fall on the pay scale. So you want to include everything and you want to make sure you're being descriptive. Also just want to spotlight, I know you all work with students and recent grads for the most part. 2 things to look for student and recent graduate population. So the Pathways program. The Pathways program is for students and recent grads for federal careers. Not every agency uses it, but it's important to know. So if you have a student that's interested in going into federal government, they should be looking for Pathways opportunities, both in USA Jobs, which they can do by filtering for students and recent grads, or even just doing an internet search of Pathways program and the federal agency that they're interested in. Not all, but many federal agencies will actually have a website or a resource about what pathways options they particularly offer for their agency. The Presidential Management Fellowship is another fabulous program for recent graduates. A really important caveat here is that the PMF is for graduates of graduate or professional programs only. So unfortunately, if you are graduating with your bachelor's or associates, this is not currently available to you. But the PMF is great if you are leaving graduate or professional school. The best piece of advice I can give you for PMF is to get on their listserv and attend any of their webinars, access their resources. It's a really short once a year application window. So PMF usually opens in early fall and it usually closes within 2 weeks. So it's a really competitive program and it has a small window. They often change the process a bit year to year. So we recommend getting on their listserv, which you can do if you go to their website. There's also some great non-competitive eligibility opportunities. So NCE means that if you successfully participate in one of these U.S. government service and language acquisition programs, you will have what's called non-competitive eligibility for a period of time. It typically looks like a year. It can be deferred if you go to graduate school, however. And that means that you do not have to compete with the public pool for jobs. So you can actually like apply for a job and you don't have to compete with folks that do not have non-competitive eligibility. So it's definitely a bump up when you are applying. So Peace Corps is a 27-month abroad experience that you participate in after graduation. AmeriCorps, you do not have to necessarily graduate, although you can certainly do it after, is a domestic service program. And then of course, Fulbright is a program that sends folks abroad. These are great opportunities for students, and they also have that non-competitive eligibility. That means when you come back, you have a advantage when applying for federal jobs. And I mentioned our Go Government resource, but I'll just mention it again. Our Go Government resource is really fantastic. It gives you a baseline. One of my favorite things, and I saw one question in the chat about, as pathways for all fields, and there is opportunities across government for everyone. So I just really like to spotlight our career guides, which allow students, and I think we're going to link it in the chat, to search for opportunities by what interests them and by what their major is. So you can see here, you can go to business and finance, you can go to legal, you can go to mathematics, and you can explore what opportunities exist, what agencies have folks in these disciplines. One thing I really want to spotlight about our career guides is it'll give you what are called job series codes. So going back to the USA Jobs discussion, in the search bar, you can actually put in what are called job series codes, which is how they classify job families. So if you had a student interested in human resources, for example, there's a job series code for that. They can quickly pull out of USA Jobs every human resources job series code classified position. So that is in these career guides in a way that's really user-friendly for the job seeker. This is just a quick example. So if you had a student interested in creative arts and they click that creative arts career guide, this is not the full scope of what they're provided. We just pulled a few tools, but you can see here they see what the job might be called, so a visual information specialist, and then there you see that 1084 is the job series code for that. And you see that this is in New York, which is awesome. It underscores that the vast majority are outside of the Washington, D.C. area. And then it also notes what this person would be doing. And I think it really drives home the point that, the jargon can be tricky. Maybe visual information specialist 1084 initially would not hook a job seeker. But then when you read the activities or the duties of the position, what they would be doing, it could be quite enticing. That seems like a really interesting and cool job, right? So it shows you examples of jobs that you could do or what a job title might entail, as well as that job series code. And then it also on the right, the top creative arts fields shows you what, and these are also great like pieces that you can use for your USA Jobs search activities, but it shows you what creative arts jobs might be classified as or called. So writing and editing, visual information, public affairs, photography. So you get the idea, but I think if you have a student who's like, well, I'm an engineer, like what would I do in government? Send them to the career guides. It's incredibly helpful. And I talked a lot about the job series codes. This just drives home the point, but so you could pull from that creative arts piece the job series codes based on what you're specifically interested in, and then put it in that keyword. And then you see here that it'll return jobs that are related to that job series code. So Go Government is designed to be a helpful tool so that you can tackle some of the difficulties and mysteries of USA Jobs. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to my colleague Danica. We mentioned that as a nonprofit, we operate as a third party to place students in federal internships as well. So she's going to share all the fabulous details about that.
Great. So we have a program at the partnership called the Future Leaders in Public Service Internship Program for undergraduates and graduates who are pursuing a federal internship. We are a third party, as Katie mentioned, and so we manage this program and the application and professional development portions, but we partner with federal agencies who select the interns who apply, who will ultimately have placements at the federal agency that we work with through this program. So our goal is to bring more students into federal internship opportunities. We had over 200 interns this summer, and the fall program begins shortly across 3 different agencies, including the National Science Foundation. Our spring 2024 cohort application just opened, and so I'm happy to share this information with you today about opportunities that are open now for your students. So the program is a semester-long internship, 10 to 12 weeks, in-person or remote opportunity, part-time or full-time opportunities at the National Science Foundation this spring. The day-to-day internship is with the Directorate of Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships at NSF. And the Partnership for Public Service, as mentioned, also provides different sessions across the semester for the participants, focused on federal hiring, networking. They hear from excellent guest speakers in federal government and receive resources like we're sharing today about federal resumes and more. So it's a really valuable opportunity for students in that work experience and also in the professional development that they receive. To be eligible to apply, students do need to be a US citizen. They need to be currently enrolled at an accredited educational institution at the level of second year or sophomore or above. The GPA requirement, the minimum is 2.5. And then their areas of interest that they would mark on their application are in the fields shown here with the check boxes. And these different fields apply to the placements at the National Science Foundation and other agencies we work with in the future. You'll see public administration, science, math, and engineering, government contracting, liberal arts, and public interest technology. So the spring 2024 application is open now through the end of October 23rd. We do have contact information there through our internships at our publicservice.org email. We're really excited to see more students in federal internships during the academic year as well as the summer. Our summer cohort, the application for this same program will open soon. And compared to the spring program, I wanted to share this as well with you because there are more program tracks. So in addition to the program tracks that I mentioned, we also have an opportunity specifically for graduate students in international affairs through the summer program. We also have a cohort specifically for data science students across federal agencies. So this opportunity will be open shortly in September, and the application has a little bit more time for students this fall to apply through the end of November. And we're excited to keep you updated on that, especially if you are receiving our newsletter updates. You'll see more of these reminders across the fall months. So before we head into the Q&A portion shortly, I wanted to talk a little bit about how federal career opportunities align with the NACE career competencies. And, you know, the workforce definitions to be career ready are really valuable for us as professionals in the higher ed space to lead our students into valuable work experiences. So just to highlight a few, thinking about communication and professionalism, we spoke about how there are only 7% only 7% of the federal workforce is under the age of 30. And so we've seen with our interns in federal government and early career talent in federal government across different agencies that they are working in a multi-generational workplace. They're learning how to communicate effectively and with professionalism, verbal and written, with high stakes events with high level panelists and speakers across the federal government. In that context is really invaluable experience and also an opportunity to practice professionalism in a nonpartisan work environment. So those are two I would highlight. Another that I would highlight from the NACE career competencies are equity and inclusion. So the interns and federal employees that we work with work across projects with DEIA efforts to improve the internal workplace and also working on relevant projects to serve their communities and this country. So we've seen, for example, prior interns working with the Department of Commerce on projects related to providing internet service to underserved populations for increased access across the country, which leads to increased access to education and more. Other examples include an intern this fall who will be with the Department of Transportation, working with the department's Office of Civil Rights, supporting internal equity projects. So it's really inspiring to see the students we work with in these federal placements, and just wanted to connect that to the NACE career competencies as well. So on our next slide, Katie's going to share how you can stay connected with us.
Thanks, Danica. So this QR code, although we're going to link in the chat, allows you to become a Call to Serve Network member. So we do always have our free tier. That is our monthly mailing list. So if you join the network, you will be receiving at least one newsletter, typically a month. And that rounds up opportunities for you all. So anything that we have for career advisors, upcoming enrollment in the Federal Advisor Certificate, webinars, as well as opportunities for your students. So we have folks who mine USA Jobs for internships and recent graduate opportunities all the time, and we'll usually include at least a half a dozen of those, as well as any events, both virtual and in person, that federal agencies may be offering to job seekers and career advisors. So it's just a really great roundup of all things federal. I really hope you will take the time to enroll in the Call to Serve Network, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. And if you have questions, or is there something that you want to specifically talk to a member of our team about, you can always contact us at calltoserve@ourpublicservice.org. And I think we put that in the chat, but we can certainly do it again. So I hope you all will become members. I also really hope that you'll become an expert, join the Federal Advisor Certificate program. Again, we have a LinkedIn Live tomorrow, and it will be accessible by recording after, with some folks that did our very first session this summer. We're already rolling up our sleeves and making some tweaks, and we'll be having our second session this fall. And I hope you'll consider joining us or sending a colleague who may be able to benefit from the information. So I believe with that, Danica, we're ready to field some questions. Is that right?
Yes, so I see questions in the chat and the Q&A box. So we'll get started with a few that we see. First, logistically, will this recording and slides be available after the presentation? Yes, absolutely, through the NACE website and the YouTube channel. This will also include the slides and links. Another question centers around the certificate program, and then I see other questions centered around the Future Leaders program. So I will start with the Future Leaders program. Are students on a quarter schedule eligible for the Future Leaders program? Yes, so students on the quarter or semester schedule are welcome to apply. The internship is 10 to 12 weeks, and the dates are specified on our webpage. The span of the internship program, also includes part-time options for students who are currently enrolled. So they're welcome to apply. And if they're selected, then our federal agency partners who may interview and do that final selection would speak to the student about their academic schedule and what works best for them. And if they are pursuing academic credit for the internship, that would be configured directly with their institution between the student and their academic advisor or registrar's office. And that is an option. Another question about the Future Leaders Program is, to be eligible, they need to be a second year student or above. So in terms, the question is that about credit, academic credit, or timing? And so as long as they have completed that 1 year of college level experience, they can apply for the program. And I shared with the slides that we have a spring program open now with the application link in the chat. And then the summer program is upcoming. So I saw a question is, if there is a summer internship, the answer is yes. We are running this program across all terms now, so fall, spring, and summer. Okay, so I'm just browsing through the chat. Does the certificate program have a cost or fee to participate? Yes, if we are able to go back to the slide with the cost information, that would be great. Katie, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. So there is a fee to participate. And I saw another question come through that I think is semi-related, but I just wanted to, so I'll answer both at the same time. So we were asked, are we a government agency and how are we funded? And then I'll talk about the cost with the federal advisor certificate. So no, we are not a federal agency. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit. The way we are funded is through different sources. So that could be foundations, grants, philanthropy, as well as fee for service. So we have a number of operations that provide services either to government agencies or the higher education community that generate revenue and allow us to cover our operating costs. And one of those things is the federal advisor certificate. This is really core to our mission. So we work really hard to keep the costs as low as possible. Danica and I worked in higher education, so we know that professional development is really important, but we wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So it does come with a cost to help us generate revenue so that we can continue to sustain our staff, our learning management system, our credentialing service, et cetera. Those fees, it's a tiered model. So again, I'll just note tier 1, always free. We want at the baseline, all Call to Serve network members to have access to our resources and our updates. Tier 2 is where fee comes into play, and that allows you to enroll in the federal advisor certificate. In tier 2, you can enroll one person at $400. And if you would like to add a second, you can do that for an extra $350. So it's scaled pricing. So if Danica and I both worked for the same university and we want to go to the federal advisor certificate, we can join the Call to Serve network together at tier 2 for a total of $750, $400 for the first, $350 for the second. If you have a team of people that would like to register, which we'd love to hear, you can do so for tier 3. Tier 3 allows you to enroll 3 people for $1,100, and you have the option to add up to 2 more at an addition of $300 each. So for 3, it's $1,100. For 4, it's $1,400. For 5, it would be $1,700. What if you have 10 people, which we really love to hear, and we've certainly seen before? You can purchase your institution 2 tier 3 packages and purchase for those 10 people, 5 in the first package, 5 in the second. Back to Danica for questions.
Katie, here's another question about the certificate. What kinds of things can advisors who complete their certificate do? What will they be able to bring to students and their campus?
I love that question. Thank you. So you can do a lot. So you can successfully help them navigate through USA Jobs. You can help them understand the nuances and complexities of job series codes, filters, all of that. But we go even deeper. So I had mentioned earlier in this webinar that not every federal opportunity is even on USA Jobs. So there are what are called direct hire authorities, which allow the government to hire outside of USA Jobs, typically because the job is expedient in some nature, connected to national security or an urgent need or concern of the US government. So we'll talk about direct hire authorities, how to find them, what are they, how to understand them. That's a great way if your student is eligible to get into government. We'll also you would also be able to talk to students, again, who maybe are a veteran, who have a disability, who identify as Native American, about what potential nuances may exist within the federal hiring system for them that could make their process easier or open more opportunities for them if they belong to that community. You will also be able to present in-depth presentations based on your student population. So whether that is how to write a federal resume, how to navigate USA Jobs, how to successfully apply for and be competitive for the Presidential Management Fellowship, for example. It will also enable you, we work really hard to help you take stock of what alumni of your institution work in federal government, how to utilize them in a way that's meaningful, how to connect with federal recruiters, get them to your career fairs, get them to join virtual events that you may host on your campus. This all culminates into what we call a capstone, but it's a campus plan. So you'll actually leave the program with a tangible plan that you get feedback from your peers and from program staff on how you're going to take all of this information and use it in a way that's meaningful. Last thing I'll say, I know we shared a lot of links and resources in the chat. One of the big takeaways from our summer session, folks feel like they have been given just dozens, if not hundreds of resources. So a lot of them are taking them, synthesizing them, and updating their websites. If they have a career services website at their institution, adding a federal section, updating the federal section. For those that maybe have credit granting, like asynchronous professional development resources, they're updating those. So it really enables you to do a lot of things. You're expert, but we give you the template and the tools and the space to craft a campus plan that is meaningful for you.
Thanks, Katie. So a question about federal hiring timelines. Can you describe a typical hiring timeline? How does it vary by role or agency?
It varies a lot across government. I know that's frustrating, but it typically is a longer timeline. You can often see that you may not get an interview for 30 to 90 days after submitting application, and that after the interview, it could be anywhere from like 2 weeks to 2 months before offer, depending on the agency, the context, etc. We just encourage advisors to encourage job seekers to be flexible and have that understanding. I think it's also important to know that a lot of this is probably a really important one, even though there's no standardized or custom timeline for the federal government. A lot of summer internships will open about now, like late summer into early fall, continue to post through mid to late fall, with application closure dates for summer internships before the end of the year. So that's a really important one to think about. And remember, the more serious of a security level, the longer lead time there's going to be. So things like the State Department, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, things like that, DOD, DHS, they're probably going to post minimum like 4 to 8 months before the student actually starts the internship. So that's an important thing to think about going into the school year. If you have a student that's interested in really top security, like intelligence community stuff, they have their own processes. Those could be a 1 to 2 years long process. I encourage you to go to those specific websites and get in touch with a recruiter.
Great. So I see a few more questions about the certificate program. We can answer briefly. Is the certificate program offered in both fall and spring? If so, when in the spring? And then is there a deadline to enroll?
I can take those. So as we mentioned our fall dates, to answer your question for spring, we do have a spring enrollment, but it's actually going to be more like January through March. And then we'll have another summer session. We don't have those dates posted for 2024 yet, but probably looking at mid-June, ending in late July. So we will have spring, although it's really more like winter. I know it's often called spring semester, and then summer in 2024. Deadline to enroll, there is not. And currently, I think we're at like a third capacity for fall. So things are looking good for you to be able to get in if you're thinking about it. We will try to send an update to Call to Serve Network when we are at 75% capacity, because what we learned with our last enrollment for summer, it went very quickly after we hit 75%, and then we had a wait list. So if you are interested for the fall, I would recommend trying to get in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and you should be fine, but there's not a specific deadline. But we will, for our part, try to let our network members know when we are approaching capacity.
Great. And just to note that we had many NACE members in our summer cohort, and we're really excited about the networking and contributions that they brought, both from NACE and each other and through this program. I see another question focused on the federal resumes. So do the same expectations for a federal resume apply to students applying to internships or just for permanent full-time opportunities? And keep your questions coming in the Q&A. So I can answer for the Future Leaders Internship Program, which is run by our organization. The students would need to submit a one-page resume, not the federal resume. So for the internship program that we run, students would submit a transcript, which can be unofficial, and their resume, a standard resume. And then for the federal resume guide that we've shared, that we go into detail on Go Government, and full-time opportunities that we've mentioned that are posted on USA Jobs, as Katie mentioned earlier, it is completely different than the one-pager. It really spans a full experience of your career and also leadership and educational experience, volunteer opportunities. It's not limited to one page. And as Katie said, it really is the application when a job seeker is submitting that on USA Jobs. The resume builder tool on USA Jobs is built into the portal. And you can also save versions of the federal resume in your account to have ready to go to attach to your applications that you submit on USA Jobs. I see a question about paid internships. So the Future Leaders program that we run is a paid internship provided as a stipend to students. Overall, the government does want to offer paid internships, and as we know, students, it is often difficult to take on an unpaid internship. So we're really working hard in our partnerships to provide those stipends to students. And the Future Leaders program are paid opportunities.
Also, for internships that are not offered through us, but offered directly through the federal government, when you go on USA Jobs, you should be able to see the salary and in the internships portal as well. Unfortunately, there are still unpaid internships in government, so we do always alert advisors and students to that, just to be mindful of what's in the posting. And if it is listed as $0 for compensation, that means it's unpaid. Partnership, I'll just note, advocates for paid internships in the federal government, and we have seen positive changes. And there are many paid opportunities. Pathways is always paid, for example. But just wanted to note that there are still some unpaid internships, and to be careful when searching.
We have a few more minutes, so we can take a few more questions. There's a question, Katie, about American University's Washington Semester Program. If you'd like to share just in general our network with Washington-based programs.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So while there are opportunities all over the country, certainly many schools do have a Washington Semester Program, like you've mentioned. So there's not a formal partnership with the program that you mentioned, but we do have a really strong relationship with what is called the Washington Program Consortium, or WPC. So for those of you that are at institutions that may have a Washington, D.C. office, or a Washington, D.C. semester or quarter away, many schools certainly do, there's a consortium, the WPC, for those institution programs that we typically, I would say once a quarter, visit their meetings. They have monthly meetings to talk more about future leaders. Obviously, that's of strong interest to those programs, as well as some of the staff actually have gone through a federal advisor certificate. So while we don't have a formal partnership with the program that you mentioned, we do work really closely with DC programs and would welcome further collaboration.
Here's a great question. What could you share more about the differences between the recent graduates program and the PMF?
Yeah, great question. So recent grads, and again, I know it is all very confusing, but recent grads is an option that agencies have to recruit students in recent grads. And again, recent grads means 2 years since graduation. So there's some time after that graduation. So that it is the umbrella through which that's the program that they can utilize to recruit those populations. And then what's really nice, the reason it's called Pathways, is if they work a minimum number of hours and they have a satisfactory performance evaluation, they can actually convert them to a full-time role. So that is the huge benefit. That's why they call it Pathways. It's pathway to government. And that is, I mean, it includes internships. So it's really for folks who are in like 2-year, 4-year, midway through their educational experience. It's paid. I've definitely heard of people doing that and getting converted like as they're graduating because they started a Pathways when they were a junior or senior in college. So I have a former student actually who did a Pathways internship right after graduating with housing and urban development. He went to Charleston, West Virginia, which was actually not his first choice, but he was really open-minded. It was just where there was an opportunity. He hadn't previously considered it. He loved it. And now a few years later, he's actually at HUD headquarters. So it really is a pathway. It's an awesome thing to be mindful of. Presidential Management Fellowship is quite a bit more, I don't want to say narrow, but it's a very specific audience. You have to have a graduate or professional degree to do the Presidential Management Fellowship. So you're not eligible if you have an associate's or a bachelor's degree, unfortunately. And it's prestigious, it's extremely competitive. But you basically get into the program. Again, the application window is really short. It's 2 weeks, usually in early fall every year. I really encourage you to get on their listserv, go to their website, go to any webinars that they offer, because the PMF program is best equipped to tell you what to expect and how to prepare your students. All that said, the structure of the program is it's a 2-year program designed to make you a manager, to really train you and prepare you to be a leader in government. And then after the 2 years, you're also able to, I mean, you're an employee when you're in PMF, but it allows you to stay and continue on your trajectory.
Great. Thank you for your questions. I know that we couldn't get to all of them in our time today, but we just wanted to say thank you again to all of you for attending this session with us. Thank you to the NACE organizers and the entire network for this collaboration. If we didn't answer your question or you want to learn more, our contact information is on the screen here. The Call to Serve network, email address there at the bottom of the slide. And we hope you stay engaged by joining our network and receiving that monthly newsletter to stay on top of these excellent resources and to be in touch with us about all you're doing on campus and how we can support. So thank you again for your time today, and we hope to be in touch soon.